But if you are going to sell or have an event, you want to have certain people on board. A business appraiser is absolutely critical if you're going to do any of the advanced estate planning. You must have a business appraiser, somebody with good credentials and good experience in your industry. You need attorneys, you need CPAs. The financial planners helping us do the need and want planning, which they're absolutely critical to the analysis. Investment bankers versus business brokers, I have my views on that. Having an advisory board or coaches to help you get where you want to go, I believe is a real recipe for success. You will get great benefits out of having people around you who want you to succeed and maybe vested in your success. And then again, the key management. So focusing on each. On the business appraiser, always somebody with experience within your industry, experience in handling estate planning or gift planning, and who've worked closely with the CPA firms on audit, and they are reputable and they've got good experience. They will help you seek a discount, maximize your discount. They'll tell you how to structure the transaction to maximize the discount. A lot of that depends on the documents that the attorneys are drafting. So the attorneys are really an incredibly important part of that team. And they'll also help you in understanding what the maximum value you can get for your company may be on the sale of the company. Showing you the gaps in your business as they exist today, where you could do better to make your business worth more. The attorneys, it usually is more than one person. I work on deals a lot, but I also do estate planning. But I have a whole team of people backing me up on the trust and estate side and on the corporate side. Because if I tried to do it all myself, I would explode, and nobody can be captain of everything, right? You have to be able to have a good quarterback on the deal, somebody who's got a lot of industry experience. So I had a client come to me recently and they wanted me to help with business succession planning. I'm going to be helping them with the family planning and general corporate stuff, but I don't have the industry experience. And I told them, I don't have the industry experience in that particular industry to really guide them. Let's find a law firm who really understands your industry, because it is a niche industry and it does require specialization. It requires somebody who knows estate planning. You've got to have somebody who's really excellent on the income tax side. It's usually not one and the same. You need to have people who are experts in ERISA, the employee benefits side, real estate, if you're leasing or owning real estate, your industry itself, whether it's government contracting or technology, having an IP lawyer, intellectual property lawyer, and maybe even a separate lawyer to represent the shareholder employee who is selling, to avoid conflicts of interest, because you can't do everything for everybody in the transaction. And invariably, there may be a conflict of interest between the shareholders and the company, and somebody's got to represent the company. Somebody should represent the shareholders. Any questions on that? CPAs. Just like lawyers come in all shapes and sizes, so do CPAs. Firms that are really, really capable of handling these types of transactions are usually the bigger firms with more sophisticated practice groups. Tax, deep bench on tax. Audit, who understand the industry. They have enough clients within the industry that they can really help you. Is the company subject to an audit? First of all, if it is subject to an audit, there's a little more scrutiny going on from the accountant's side to make sure that the financial statements are being presented properly. Are the financial statements true and accurate? Those are representations that have to be given in the transactional documents. The better the CPA on the outside, the more comfort the buyer has on the buy side. So, experience. Income tax experience. There are a ton of issues that come up depending on the structure of the transaction. Whether it's an S Corp, a C Corp, an LLC, there are myriad issues. I won't go into all of them, but if you don't know what these issues are and your counsel doesn't know what they are, your CPA better know what they are. And the team needs to work together to make sure that the letter of intent and the purchase agreement reflect exactly what you want so that you get the best economic result after tax. A lot of times I'll be dealing with corporate lawyers who haven't even talked about the tax side of the transaction. And they've done a letter of intent, the client has signed it, the buyer has signed it, and there's no discussion of what the tax treatment of the transaction will be to the seller. And then they find out, because of the structure that the buyer's counsel wants to do, that there's going to be a huge ordinary income tax hit. Now what? You try to negotiate that at the front end, get it into the letter of intent. Who's going to bear the cost of that? Because the buyer gets a benefit out of it, should the seller be protected from the downside. So it's all part of the negotiation. Taxes is an absolutely critical part of the negotiation. And the last function that the CPA can serve, and I think is extremely important, is in figuring out the needs and the wants, is to do the calculations. If you don't have a corporate finance group internally, you need your CPA who knows your tax situation to be able to project out what's going to happen as a result of the transaction. And so they're going to be involved throughout the process, including figuring out whether any target working capital amount has to be set aside for the closing, because a lot of these deals require that you have a certain amount of working capital, current assets minus current liabilities, to run the business after the closing. So the determination of that correct amount, the negotiation of it, and then actually coming up with it, projecting it at closing, and then after closing is the function of the CPA. All part of the transaction, negotiated transaction. Financial planner, we said, helping in projecting needs and wants, tax projection, and of course, most importantly, once the deal is closed, how do we allocate our assets and invest them after the transaction? Side note on investment bankers versus business brokers. There are business brokers who are not investment bankers. These are people that may have the same registrations for Securities and Exchange Commission purposes, but they just don't have the sophistication, but they may be dealing with smaller businesses, so their fees are less and they're more affordable. I'll call them business brokers. In some cases, they work really, really well, particularly in niche industries where there are certain buyers who are looking for smaller companies that do this type of work. So I sold a company that's an equipment rental business a couple of years ago. They got an incredible multiple. They worked with a business broker who knew the buyers in the marketplace and had negotiated many different transactions, and that was the way to go, because it was the industry expertise that really drove it. On the other hand, I've dealt with business brokers who are, I would refer to as hucksters. They get a fee, they bring a list of people, and then they disappear. They don't really help you negotiate the transaction, or if they are trying to negotiate the transaction, they don't know what they're doing. So I've had experience with many business brokers over my career in usually in small transactions. But if the transaction is north of $7-8 million, I always recommend that you engage an investment banker who's experienced in the industry. And they're all over the country. In government contracting, there's several great investment bankers locally that we work with, and we can always give you recommendations of that. But the difference is the investment banker's fee is much higher, but they're going to do a lot more for you to get to the closing, and that justifies the fee. We had a closing dinner last night for the client that we sold to the private equity firm about 2 months ago. It took us 2 months just to get the closing dinner planned. People were coming in from all over the country. It was lovely. We had a great dinner. And the investment banker was the key to this deal. Without them, we never would have gotten the right buyer, and we never would have gotten the deal done. So they were absolutely critical to the deal. And they helped us negotiate through some very tough times. Coach and advisory board, I highly recommend it. I mentioned in probably the first session, there's a book called Built to Scale by my friend Marissa Levin. She's come up with a process for assembling advisory boards. I think it's a really nice, short exposition of what an advisory board consists of and how to go out and build it. I highly recommend it. It's available on Amazon. Buy it. But the advisory board that you assemble should be people that are familiar with your industry, with you, who know you, who are willing to invest time into your business or into your client's business and will add something. So it's often somebody with corporate finance experience, might be somebody with investment experience, clearly somebody with industry experience who can introduce customers or prospective employees, who can attract people because they're associated with you. They may not, the employee may not know who you are, but they may know the advisor, and the advisor may be influential in getting somebody to come work for you. These are really valuable tools to have if you have that advisory board. And then you may compensate them. Usually you do. There are standard ways of compensating advisory board members as well as directors. What's the difference between an advisory board and a director? The director has fiduciary responsibility and liability. So it's much more serious, and they have decision-making authority as well. An advisory board is just advisors. They don't have fiduciary duties, they don't have liability, and most people, when asked to serve on an advisory board, would much prefer to do that than be on a board of directors. In the old days, everybody was on the board of directors. I don't see that as much anymore. Lawsuits proliferate.